Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Our mission here is, well, it's pretty simple. We take these huge monolithic companies, the ones whose choices genuinely shape our world, and we try to give you the strategic map to understand them.
Yeah, we turn stacks of, let's be honest, sometimes really dense sources into something you can actually use.
Exactly. And today, we are peeling back the layers on a company whose name you definitely know. You see it on skyscrapers. You used to see it on a very famous football jersey. We're talking about Aonplex.
And most people hear Aon and just think insurance, a huge insurance broker, but that title, it barely scratches the surface of what this company has become.
It really doesn't. When you hear Aon, you might think risk management, sure, or maybe that Manchester United sponsorship. But this is a British-American professional services giant, and its history is, well, it's almost shockingly different from its current, high finance image.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going all the way back to 1919. Chicago. We're going to trace this journey from, believe it or not, selling cheap accident policies door to door, all the way through this brutal, relentless strategy of global mergers.
And not just mergers, but fundamental shifts in what they even do. They move completely away from their original business model. And along the way, there's tragic loss, major regulatory failures across multiple continents. It's quite a story.
It is. It's a case study in corporate reinvention. Aon today is the second largest insurance broker in the world, no question.
Right. But the real story is how they got there. How they evolved from just selling insurance policies to actively managing the most complex risks and, human resource challenges for the biggest corporations on the planet. Our sources give us that timeline. They let us see exactly why they're structured the way they are now.
Okay, that sounds like a powerful narrative.
Yeah.
So let's unpack this journey of a company whose name, Aon, actually means one.
Yeah, the irony of that name, given how many pieces make up the whole, is something we'll definitely come back to.
For sure. So before we dive into the history, let's just plant a flag. Who is Aonplex right now in 2024? Because it's not just an insurance company.
No, not at all. You have to think of it as a British-American professional services firm. And that transatlantic thing, that duality, it's actually key to understanding how they operate.
How so?
Well, their global headquarters is in London, 122 Leadenhall Street. That's a clear signal about their commitment to the international financial markets.
Right.
But their roots and their massive North American operations, they are still firmly planted in Chicago in that huge skyscraper they call the Aon Center. So you have this dual continent structure overseen by the chairman, Lester Knight, the president, Eric Anderson, and the CEO, Greg Case.
Okay, so that's the structure. But to really get a handle on the modern Aon, we have to talk about where the money comes from. And you mentioned a pivot, so let's pause and define a core difference right now. The difference between underwriting and brokering.
This distinction is everything. It is the key to their entire modern strategy, and it's why they became a global giant.
Okay, so underwriting.
When a company underwrites insurance, they're the ones taking on the risk. They are on the hook financially. If your factory burns down, the underwriter is the one who pays out the claim.
So you need huge amounts of cash on hand.
Huge. It's a capital-intensive business. You need massive reserves, and you're carrying all that liability yourself. It's risky.
Okay, so then what's brokering?
Brokering or consulting is completely different. You're the expert middleman. You're not carrying the risk. You go into that factory, you assess its risks, you help the owner find the best third-party insurer, and you negotiate the policy for them.
So you're selling expertise. You're selling advice, not your own capital.
Precisely. And that is a high-margin, capital-light business. And Aon's business today is almost entirely that brokering and consulting.
And they split that, $15 billion revenue stream into two main pillars?
That's right. The first, and by far the largest, is what they call risk capital. This accounts for about 67% of their 2024 revenues.
And this is the core insurance and risk management stuff we were just talking about.
Exactly. Brokerage, consulting for corporate clients on operational risk, property and casualty insurance, and this is a really sophisticated part, reinsurance.
Reinsurance, insurance for insurance companies.
You've got it. If a big insurer has taken on too much risk, say they've insured every single skyscraper in Miami against hurricanes, that's a huge liability for them.
Yeah, one bad storm and they're wiped out.
So they go to a firm like Aon, a reinsurance broker, who helps them offload some of that risk to another company, a reinsurer. It is a very specialized, very complex, and very lucrative corner of the market. And Aon is a powerhouse in it.
Okay, so that's 2/3 of the business. What's the other third?
The other 33% comes from their second pillar, human capital. And this is the part of the business that directly impacts millions of employees all over the world, even if they've never heard the name Aon.
Oh, so
This division designs and manages health insurance solutions, retirement plans, pension structures for huge companies. They also provide talent advisory services, consulting on hiring and compensation.
It's a brilliant synergy, isn't it?
It's incredible. If you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, you go to Aon to manage the risk for your factories and supply chains, and then you just stay with them because they can also design your entire employee benefits and retirement structure.
They get embedded deep inside the client's operations on both the financial side and the human resources side.
Deeply embedded, and the scale of that is just immense. When you look at the 2024 numbers, they're kind of staggering.
Let's run through them. Revenue, U.S., $15.7 billion.
And a net income of $2.65 billion. Their total assets are just shy of $49 billion.
Wow. And to get that done, you need people, a lot of them. They have approximately 66,000 employees worldwide.
And that huge human footprint, it's not just for making sales. It creates this inherent challenge of keeping everyone on the same page, of global compliance, which, as we'll see, has been a major issue for them.
Right. They're ranked 300th on the Fortune 500, 388th on the Forbes Global 2000. It all just confirms their position as the second largest insurance broker in the world. You really can't talk about global finance or corporate HR without talking about Aon.
And that's the thing. They're not just responding to the market anymore. At their size, with their level of specialization, they are actively helping to define what modern corporate risk management looks like around the globe.
Okay, so let's take that $15 billion global titan and rewind the clock. Way back, because the origins of Aon Plc are completely, and I mean completely, unrecognizable from what we just described.
Not even in the same universe. We have to go back to the early 20th century, to a man named W. Clement Stone and a company called the Combined Insurance Company of America.
So how did it start?
The first seed was planted in 1918. Stone's mother bought a small insurance agency in Detroit, and a young W. Clement Stone went to work with her. But he was ambitious. By 1919, he'd started his own thing in Chicago, the Combined Registry Co.
And he wasn't selling complex reinsurance treaties to other insurance companies.
Not even close. He was selling high-volume, super accessible accident insurance. We're talking low-cost, low-benefit policies for the average working person, someone who couldn't afford a big comprehensive plan but needed, something in case of a small accident.
And the business model was really innovative for the time,
And
right?
It was brilliant. It was direct. It was fast. Stone's agents could actually underwrite and issue the policies right there on the spot. No waiting.
Instant gratification for a customer base that the big, formal brokers probably just ignored.
Exactly. Stone went straight to the people. It's incredible to think that this business model not only survived, but actually thrived through the Roaring '20s, and then somehow made it through the Great Depression.
That's where you see the founder's grit, I think.
Absolutely. The Depression shuttered countless businesses, but Stone just adapted. He had to reduce his workforce, sure, but he doubled down on training and sales discipline. He knew that even when people had no money, they still feared accidents.
There's that great detail in the sources, too, about him moving the business.
Yeah, that's amazing. He temporarily moved operations to Arkansas and Texas, not for some big business reason, but because the climate was better for his son, who had a respiratory illness. That's the level of personal commitment that kept the whole thing going.
So he spends decades building this, consolidating various agencies he buys up, and then in 1947, it becomes official.
Right. The Combined Insurance Company of America is formally incorporated, and this is the company that pushes forward, selling health and accident policies, eventually even expanding internationally to Australia and Great Britain in the 70s.
But then, as so often happens, the momentum stalls. The sources are pretty clear that the company just stagnated for about a decade under W. Clement Stone Jr.
Yeah, growth flatlined, innovation just stopped, and that prompted this incredible comeback story. The elder Stone, at 79 years old, comes back to take control in 1982.
Just temporarily.
Just long enough to orchestrate the single most important move in the company's future, the merger with Patrick Ryan's firm.
This is the moment. This is where the old-school, high-volume sales model crashes into the new era of sophisticated financial services.
Absolutely. Patrick Ryan was a totally different breed. A Northwestern grad, started his own thing, Ryan Insurance Company, in 1964, specializing in auto credit insurance. He was already thinking much bigger.
He was a broker.
At heart, yes. He expanded in the 70s by buying up the insurance brokerage units of a big conglomerate called Esmark. So when he merged with Combined and took the reins, he initiated this massive, immediate strategic shift.
He had zero interest in Stone's old business model.
None. Ryan immediately started moving the new Combined company towards insurance brokering and more upscale, complex risk products. He was transforming them from a company that issues policies into a firm that gives high-end advice.
And that kind of change requires some tough decisions.
Oh, yeah. He brought in major cost-cutting measures, trimmed the staff. It was a clear signal to the market and internally that this company was done being a decentralized sales force. It was going to become a lean, centrally managed brokerage powerhouse.
And the final piece of that transformation comes in 1987 with the rebrand.
The holding company is formally renamed Aon. It comes from a Gaelic word that means one.
You have to admire the boldness of that name choice.
Oh, it's incredible. You take this gritty, low-cost accident insurer, you merge it with a sophisticated brokerage, and you immediately brand yourself for global domination with a name that suggests unity and singular focus.
It's the end of the Stone era.
Completely. And the beginning of a relentless, singularly focused global expansion. They went from the guy selling you a policy at the train station to the firm advising the CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
So let's trace how that one company, Aon, immediately set out to become many through this incredibly aggressive global expansion.
Patrick Ryan's legacy really is this M&A playbook. He knew that to compete with the big guys like Marsh and McLennan, they had to build a global footprint, and they had to do it fast.
And the 1990s were just a whirlwind of activity. It started pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, it did. In 1992, they acquired a major Dutch insurance broker, Hudig Langeveld. That gave them an early important foothold in Europe.
But the really pivotal moment came a few years later, in 1995.
Yes. This is when Aon sold its remaining direct life insurance holdings to General Electric. And this wasn't just some minor deal. This was Aon selling off the core function of its own heritage. They were selling the business of underwriting risk.
Which seems so counterintuitive. Why sell the very thing your company was founded on?
Because, as we said, underwriting is capital intensive. It ties up billions of dollars. By selling it, Aon freed up all that capital and committed 100% to the capital-light, high-margin world of consulting and brokering. It was a move to unlock their growth potential.
And with that cash and that new focus, they went on a shopping spree.
A massive one. 1997 saw these huge purchases like the Menet Group and, most importantly, the insurance brokerage A&A Services. Those were so big that for a short time they actually became the largest insurance broker in the world.
And then they went truly global in 98.
Doubled their employee base. They bought Gili Carvajal, which was Spain's biggest retail insurance broker. They formed Aon Korea. They were just hoovering up these established regional experts to get instant-market access everywhere.
But that kind of speed has to come at a price.
It did. The sources are really clear on this. By 1999, the sheer cost of integrating all these different companies, merging IT systems, aligning different corporate cultures, it hammered profits. It's the classic problem of acquisition-led growth. Some people call it acquisition indigestion.
Right. They bought another business in 2000, but then almost immediately had to cut 6% of the workforce just to deal with all the restructuring costs.
Exactly. But that experience seems to have refined their strategy. As they moved into the 21st century, they shifted from just buying up geographic territory to making these very targeted leaps into specific high-value advisory sectors.
And the first big leap was in reinsurance.
Right, 2008. They acquired the reinsurance intermediary Benfield Group for $1.75 billion. This wasn't just about getting bigger, it was about getting smarter and more specialized. Benfield made Aon an instant powerhouse in that complex, high-stakes world of global catastrophic risk.
And the second major leap came just 2 years later, in 2010.
That was the $4.9 billion acquisition of Hewitt Associates. And this deal is so critical because it cemented the two-pillar structure of the modern Aon we talked about.
Because Hewitt wasn't an insurance company.
Not at all. It was a leading human resources consulting firm. Hewitt added 23,000 employees, it massively boosted Aon's human capital side, and it pushed them deep into business process outsourcing, managing things like payroll and benefits for other companies.
Which provides that really sticky, recurring revenue.
Incredibly sticky. If Aon is managing your company's pension plan, you're not going to switch providers on a whim. The Hewitt deal is what really made them that two-headed giant.
But what's just as important in this M&A playbook is what they chose to sell, the divestments. They were ruthless about getting rid of anything that didn't fit that new model,
They really were. And the perfect example is from 2007. They sold off their two major underwriting subsidiaries.
including the original company.
The original one. The Combined Insurance Company of America, W. Clement Stone's baby, was sold to ACE Limited for $2.4 billion. The rationale they gave was that these were low-margin and capital-intensive businesses.
They literally sold their own past to finance their future.
That's a perfect way to put it, and they kept doing it. In 2017, they sold off the employee benefits outsourcing business, a big chunk of what they'd gotten from Hewitt to Blackstone for almost $5 billion.
So if you put it all together, the strategy is just relentless.
It is. Aon consistently moves away from anything that requires huge cash reserves or massive administrative overhead, and they pour all that focus and capital into high-end, sophisticated consulting, advisory, and brokerage services. They learned the hard lesson that owning the risk is way less profitable than just advising other people on how to manage it.
But a company that grows that fast across that many borders, swallowing up dozens of different corporate cultures, is bound to run into some trouble.
Oh, absolutely. And Aon has faced some major, very expensive regulatory reckonings over the years.
The first one really redefined the whole industry in the United States, right? The investigation led by Eliot Spitzer back in 2004, 2005.
Yeah, he was the New York Attorney General at the time, and he went after the big three, Aon, Marsh & McLennan, and Willis.
And the whole thing was about a practice called contingent commissions.
Right, which sounds complicated, but it was basically secret kickbacks. The insurance companies were paying the brokers directly on top of what the client was paying them.
Which creates a massive conflict of interest.
A huge one. The question was, is the broker recommending an insurer because they're the best option for the client, or because that insurer is paying the broker a bigger commission under the table? It suggested the advice was tainted by self-interest.
And the resolution was costly.
Very. In 2005, Aon agreed to a $190 million settlement. Now, they didn't formally admit to any wrongdoing, which is pretty standard in these things, but a fine that big sends a very clear message. The whole industry had to become much more transparent after that.
But the scrutiny didn't stop at the U.S. border. Just a few years later, they got hit in the U.K.
It did. In 2009, the UK's Financial Services Authority, the FSA, fined them almost £6 million for what they called inadequate bribery and corruption controls.
So this wasn't about contingent commissions.
No, this was about their global operations. The FSA found that Aon had failed to properly assess the risks of who they were dealing with overseas between 2005 and 2007.
So not necessarily that they found proof of bribery, but that the systems to prevent bribery weren't good enough.
Exactly. The controls were lacking for a company of their size and global reach. Aon cooperated, which got them a 30% discount on the fine, but it really showed that their rapid M&A strategy had left some big, dangerous holes in their compliance structure.
Which connects directly to the biggest regulatory problem they faced, the violations of the U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the FCPA.
Right, that all came to a head in 2011. And the FCPA is a really serious law. It makes it illegal for U.S. companies to bribe foreign government officials to get or to keep business. It's designed to stop American companies from exporting corruption.
And Aon got hit hard on this.
They paid a $16.26 million penalty to the SEC and the Department of Justice. The investigation found that Aon subsidiaries had made over $3.6 million in improper payments to foreign officials and other facilitators.
And the reason was just blatant, to win insurance contracts.
Simple bribery. But the really shocking part is the time frame. These payments went on from 1983 all the way through 2007.
Wait, through 2007? That's 2 years after the huge Spitzer settlement, which should have put everyone on high alert.
That's the thing. It suggests this wasn't just a few rogue employees. It points to a systemic issue, probably a culture they inherited when they bought up some of these smaller firms in other countries.
So this goes back to that problem of acquisition indigestion. You don't just buy a company's assets, you buy its problems too.
You buy its culture, its habits, its skeletons in the closet, and the payments were happening all over the world. Costa Rica, Egypt, Vietnam, Indonesia, the UAE, Myanmar, Bangladesh. It shows how widespread the lack of oversight really was.
So these legal challenges, they reveal the dark side of that aggressive growth strategy. The fines are big, But the real cost must have been just the monumental effort to fix it all.
Exactly. It's the decade-long, incredibly expensive task of trying to build and enforce a single global standard for anti-corruption and compliance after years of letting all these different regional operations do their own thing. It's the price they paid for that incredible speed of expansion.
The story of a huge corporation like this is often told in mergers and fines, but sometimes it intersects with these major world events in a way that is just profound. And Aon's story is permanently linked to the tragedy of September 11th.
It is. Their New York offices were in the South Tower of the World Trade Center, and they were high up on the 92nd floor and then a whole block of floors from 98 to 105.
And the source material really highlights the incredible leadership shown in those first few minutes. When the first plane hit the North Tower at 8:46 a.m., an Aon executive named Eric Eisenberg immediately, and with no hesitation, started an evacuation of their offices in the South Tower.
That decision saved so many lives. The timeline is just chilling. There was only a 17-minute window between that first impact on the North Tower and the second plane hitting their tower, the South Tower, at 9:03 a.m.
Just 17 minutes. And in that terrifying, confusing window, because of that order to evacuate, an incredible 924 of the roughly 1,100 Aon employees who were there that morning managed to get below the 77th floor.
Below the impact zone.
Right, before the second plane hit.
But the loss was still just immense. Aon lost 176 employees that day. These were the people who were above the impact zone or who just couldn't get out in time before the tower collapsed. It was the largest loss of life for any single company in the World Trade Center.
It is heartbreakingly, one of the people killed was the executive who made that crucial evacuation call, Eric Eisenberg. That human cost, it really shaped the company's identity in the years that followed.
For sure. But shifting gears completely, Aon also sought out public visibility in a very different way. They decided to put their complex business-to-business brand in front of billions of consumers through a massive sports sponsorship.
The Manchester United deal.
The landmark shirt sponsorship deal. They signed it in 2009, and in 2010, the Aon logo replaced AIG on the front of those famous red jerseys.
Which is an interesting move, right? Your clients are CEOs and risk managers, not, the average football fan.
It seems counterintuitive, but the brand recognition you get from that is just incalculable. It was also very expensive.
The deal was worth £80 million over 4 years. At the time, it was the most lucrative shirt deal in history.
It was. It took this complex, kind of opaque professional services firm, and it connected its name to this global brand that people have a really emotional connection to. You can't buy that kind of trust with trade ads.
And even after Chevrolet took over the main shirt sponsorship in 2014, Aon didn't just walk away.
No, they deepened the relationship. From 2013 all the way to 2021, Aon had the naming rights to the club's training facility and sponsored their training kits. That deal was reportedly worth another £180 million.
So they shifted their association from just the team to the idea of elite performance and training excellence.
Exactly. It's a very strategic, long-term commitment to brand association. From the profound tragedy of 9/11 to the global visibility of a football sponsorship, you can see a company that is very determined to control its own narrative.
And that relentless strategic maneuvering, it continues right up to the present day, often with these huge, eye-watering sums of money involved.
And the biggest recent story from 2021 was actually the massive deal that didn't happen.
The merger with their biggest rival, Willis Towers Watson.
Right. This would have created an undisputed #1 behemoth in the global brokerage space. It would have been game over for the competition.
So what happened?
They agreed to merge, but the deal was terminated. The reason was a straight-up antitrust impasse. Regulators in the U.S. and Europe looked at the sheer market power this new combined company would have, and they basically blocked it.
Wow. So Oleon has reached a scale where its own growth is now being checked by governments worried about a monopoly.
That's right. But they didn't pause for long. They immediately went back to the M&A playbook, but they refocused their firepower on targets that would strengthen their core services without setting off all the antitrust alarm bells.
Which brings us to the NFP deal.
The prime example. In December 2023, they agreed to acquire NFP, which is a big provider of risk, benefits, and wealth advisory services, but they specifically target the middle market.
And the price tag on that was $13.4 billion.
Massive. The fact that they executed one of their biggest acquisitions ever right after the failure of the biggest merger in history, it just signals their fierce determination to keep growing.
They were telling the market, we're growing one way or another.
And the middle market is a smart play. It's a stable, diverse client base that makes them less dependent on only serving those top-tier global corporations.
And beyond just buying market share, they're also buying technology.
Oh, absolutely. In March 2024, they acquired the tech assets and the intellectual property of a company called Hum.ai. It's an AI-powered platform.
So this is about integrating artificial intelligence directly into their risk models.
Exactly. Hum.ai is designed to enhance their commercial fleet services. So think about dynamic insurance pricing and real-time risk advice for huge trucking companies. It shows that Aon understands the future of risk advice is predictive, not just reactive.
And this combination of aggressive M&A and tech investment is why they're constantly getting industry awards.
For sure, if you look at a snapshot of their accolades, you can see where they are really valued. It's in the consulting and advisory roles.
Like in 2014, the Financial Times named them Investment Consultancy of the Year.
Right. And on the human capital side, in 2013, they got a perfect score on the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index, which is a big deal.
And their specialized divisions, like the reinsurance arm, were constantly winning awards for their analytics.
And that's the theme. Aon is valued for its intellectual capital, its data analytics, its specialized expertise. It's the ultimate confirmation that their big strategic pivot away from underwriting was the right move.
So if we tie all this together, their strategy today is fundamentally the same as it was when Patrick Ryan took over.
It really is. Relentlessly use massive M&A to redefine their market position. Keep shedding the low-margin, capital-intensive stuff and pour that money into high-margin advisory services, now with a big focus on AI and new markets like the middle market with NFP. They're doing whatever it takes to remain the undisputed #2 global broker while constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
That is just an immense story of corporate transformation. I mean, we've watched a tiny Chicago firm selling cheap accident policies become this multi-billion-dollar global colossus that manages the most complex risks imaginable for the biggest companies on Earth.
It's a powerhouse defined by relentless acquisition, by that profound and necessary shift away from underwriting toward high-margin consulting, and by a history marked by both these incredible strategic triumphs, like the Hewitt acquisition, and some very significant systemic regulatory fines.
It really showcases the power of a strategic pivot in the face of both internal stagnation and a rapidly changing market.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you, the learner. The company's name, Aon, means one in Gaelic. It was the name Patrick Ryan chose to symbolize unity and integration.
Right.
Yet its entire history is this constant collision of disparate parts. Dozens of acquired companies, millions in penalties for compliance failures in 7 different countries, these massive, sometimes competing divisions like risk capital and human capital. So the question for you to consider is this. In the world of hyper-scaled, acquisition-driven professional services, can a company ever truly be one, or is it perpetually destined to remain a powerful yet fractured collection of highly specialized parts, unified only by the brand name on the balance sheet?